Hello and good morning, and welcome to the very first Minerva, the state of the property market for UK property lawyers. This is episode number 1. What are our objectives today? This webcast is designed for managing partners of law firms. It is designed for heads of conveyancing departments. It is designed for anyone who is interested in the housing market and how that will affect the conveyancing and conveyancing instructions over the next six months. I am joined today by my colleague Richard Hinton from TwentyConvey. Welcome, Richard. And he will be giving you some of the understanding of how the data that we're going to present to you has been collected and what it all means. This insight is going to give you an insight, a real deep view into how the housing market is performing right now, right today. The data is bang up to date, and we will be able to look at how the conveyancing market will react both today and over the next 6 months. In fact, this is really the holy grail for any business. Being able to predict how your sales are going to grow over the next 6 months and whether they're going to go up or down is absolutely key. And uniquely, we are able to give you a very accurate understanding of how that is going to perform. That's almost unique, and we can do it because we have estate agency data. Estate agency data of what is going on the streets of Great Britain as we speak. How many houses are coming onto the market? How many houses are becoming sold subject to contract? Of course, a little bit later today, we've got Jeremy Hunt giving his speech in Parliament. I would argue this will give you today more of an insight into what's going to happen in your business than Jeremy will be able to give you in a couple of hours' time. Okay, everybody's interested in the housing market. We know it's a key part of the fabric of everyone's life. Okay, most people go on Rightmove on a regular basis. Other portals, I am told to say, are available. Okay, so they go on and they're looking at what's happening in the market. Are they going to list the house for sale? Are they going to rent? Are they going to buy? What's my house worth? I think there's another portal who has an advert that's saying, oh, what's my house worth? But what's happening to transaction volumes is vital to conveyancers. Okay, so whatever the government does today in its budget will not want to upset that housing market over the next 12 months. At some point we've got an election coming, and we might see some tweaks to stamp duty, we might see some help for first-time buyers, but there won't be any major changes to the way the housing market performs, because that would be political suicide. So the market as it stands today will pretty much be the precursor for the next 12 months. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest then. Richard Hinton has been in this industry maybe a little bit longer than me, and that's a long time, but I'll let him tell you all about himself. Richard, can I introduce you, and can you tell the viewers who you are and where you come from?
Indeed, thank you, Richard, and thank you very much for the invitation to join you and to share with you our data. So, yes, I'm Richard Hinton. I've been in and around conveyancing. Probably not as long as you, Richard. 30 plus years, I think.
Okay.
I had a stint. Is that?
I'm at 35. Go on. Lots of experience between us there, Rich.
I might be lying, but I was at Shoesmiths for 12 years, running the marketing function there, and I've had 6-year stints with LexisNexis Visual Files and also with Searchflow. So well and truly embedded, I suppose, in residential conveyancing. But for the last 10 years, I've been running my own little business, Pittsburgh Consulting, and we're working now with 20CI to bring to market 20Convey, which is the data set that you're have in front of you or you're working with. And that really is the first opportunity we've had to bring the heavyweight data capabilities of 20CI across the world from the estate agency market that you mentioned into the conveyancing space. So it's really very exciting that we're helping law firms now manage their businesses with the blinkers off in the way that you described earlier. So very much looking forward to the show.
Okay, right. Thanks very much and welcome. So onto our first slide of today. Now, some of you may well have seen the UK Property Market Stats Show presented by Chris Watkin. Chris Watkin is an absolute superstar. If you haven't seen that show before, it's published once a week on a Friday. And it is aimed fairly and squarely at the estate agency market. He goes into great detail about what is happening in estate agency, both in terms of sales and lettings, and he has guests on every week, and they give you a real good vibe of what's happening in the property market for estate agents. I'm really pleased to say that Chris has very kindly allowed us to use some of his slides today, and the first part of this show will be in effect a recap of what Chris said last Friday, and we've boiled that down into the stuff that's really interesting to the conveyancing world. Okay, so thanks again to Chris, and let's move on with his first slide. So this is showing the number of weekly listings, or that's number of new properties on the market in 2024. Now, what you can see from this slide here is the large thick white line is 2024. And I think the first thing that stands out to me on that is that 2024 is already running at higher listings than 2017, 2018, 2019 and 2023, significantly above 2023. So the number of properties coming on the market is already up, and that is for the first 8 weeks of this year. Let's put some figures onto those. In the week 8 of which is I think the last week of February, first week of March, we had 36,133 properties come onto the market. And if you look back, that's higher. Well, it's a good 10% higher than last year. It's 20% higher than 2022, and we're just looking at those stats. It's actually the highest number of houses coming onto the market in any year going back to 2017, which is absolutely incredible. The housing market is now, people are now starting to put the houses on the market, but not too many, as we will see. Okay, cumulatively, so that's from the 1st of January to today, we're at 257,000 houses, 257,000 listings so far this year. Again, looking at the previous years and in comparison, we are way up on anything that we've seen so far. Only 2019, when it was 248,000, comes close. And again, it's a good 10% up on last year. And I think that's from talking to estate agents and talking to lawyers, they're all feeling that similar sort of number in new instructions, that houses, the number of properties coming to the market is definitely more. Let me just go back. So there we go. So this is quite important because when it comes to the housing market, supply and demand remain the most important factors. Chris on his show last week was pointing out the fact that the total number of houses for sale, that's not just ones that have come on this to the market, but the ones that were on last year and you haven't yet sold. If you went into estate agents today, you could find 550,000 houses across the country currently for sale. Compare that number to the figure back in 2021, just as we came out of COVID, and it was only 360,000 houses. That's why there was very little supply at that time and very high demand, as there was a flee to the country and people wanted to get out of the cities. And therefore, what did we see? High demand, low supply, prices rose, and everyone was scrambling for houses. And within no time at all our conveyancer friends were screaming and completely swamped with instructions, and that then continued throughout 21 and throughout 22. Just as a comparison though, the fact that we've now risen to 550,000 is nothing to be worried about. We're not about to see a housing market slump. If we go back to 2008, just at the time of the financial crash, there were 1.4 million houses on the market. So supply and demand again, we had way more supply, not very much demand. Down came those prices. Look how far we are off that though. 550,000 today, 1.4 million. There's a long way to go. What we're seeing is a rebalancing with more properties coming onto the market, meaning people will feel more comfortable to list the house and actually move because they can find somewhere where they want to go and live. Now, so that's the number of houses coming on the market, and for those interested in upfront property information, of course, that's a key number. More important to conveyancers, though, is how many are actually selling. So this next slide of Chris's, okay, is the national number of sold subject to contract properties in week 8. So what we mean here, these are the net sales, I believe. Oh no, these are sold subject to contract. 25,437 in week 8 in 24. Again, about 15% up on last year. So memorandums of sale dropping on a conveyancer's desk, 15% more today than there were last year. And that compares really well with the 2017, 2018 and 2019. Of course, during post-COVID, 21, 22, those numbers were through the roof. We were at 29, 27,000. Okay, so that's why everyone was swamped. Now, market's quite buoyant. We're doing okay. Okay, now this is net sales. Okay, so net sales are gross sales. That's number of sales agreed, less all those jobs that have fallen through because the survey report's not come back adequately. There's a problem with the title. So we have net sales. And the key to looking at this particular graph, which is quite complex, is again the little white line, which is 2024. There you can see the white line has climbed up as we started the year and is now above the orange line and the pink line. Orange was the average of that 27 to 2019 period, which is pre-COVID and more of a normal market. And 2023 is last year. Look how much we're up on last year for net sales. That's almost 20%, 15 to 20% up on net sales between this year and last year. And significantly, we're up over the 2017, 2019 average. Just having a look at the wider graph, you can see the yellow line has dropped down. That was when COVID hit. That was the COVID year of 2020. And of course, there were no sales going on when we were all in lockdown. Interestingly though, if you look at all three, the green, the blue and the pink, they're up and down throughout this early part of the year. And that's due to bank holidays. So it depends on how many bank holidays you had, you see those dips. Of course, the pink one last year, we had 3 dips because we had the Queen's funeral as well. Okay, the next thing though is if we're trying to predict forward on what your conveyancing instructions are going to be, if you follow the curve for all those, they start low in January, of course, they rise quite rapidly, and then they stay stable until the summer months, maybe week 23, 24, and then it starts to slide. So from week 25 onwards, we start to see the slide. As we go through the summer holidays, everyone goes away, kids are off school, not looking at houses. You see a little dip around end of August, when we have the August bank holiday, and then it remains fairly flat but slightly decreasing into the end of the year, and then of course a big drop off in November and December. So as a predictor, you can now forecast what's going to happen to that white line throughout the rest of this year, and you can see that we're now going to be fairly stable other than the bank holidays all the way through to the summer, and then slightly dip down towards the end of the year. Okay, so there is your predictor. Absolutely fantastic data. Okay, just going to cumulative net sales for the year. That's again because if there are a lot of jobs falling through, that would have a big effect on this, but there aren't. What we're seeing is today 135,000 net sales so far this year. I'm trying to read the pink. That is what Chris is saying. That's 106% of the average between 27 and 2019. But most importantly for you on the ground, what you'll be feeling today is that it's a good 17-18% up on that 117 figure of last year. And that's why everyone's starting to feel quite good about themselves. Okay, so that, ladies and gentlemen, was the estate agency data. Now then, I'm now going to bring Richard back into this conversation because these are the headline stats for the conveyancing data that we get. So Richard, do you want to talk us through this slide and what we're actually talking about here? Is that okay?
Yes, gladly. Thank you, Richard. It's fascinating, isn't it? All that the volatility that you've just been running through. I mean, if you imagine that conveyancing firms aren't standing still during that period, so they resource themselves suitably for those peaks and those troughs. Which I mean, we always knew it was a tough job running a conveyancing operation, but I think as much as your data, the data helps look forward, I think it also highlights some of the issues and the management challenges that people have had historically in trying to navigate those extraordinary peaks and troughs. So what we're looking at here now, Richard, so this is the data that is derived predominantly from the land registry. We take it from the price paid data set under license. And we're looking at, it's slightly lagged because our trigger is when the AP1 is submitted to the land registry, and we wait 3 months after the end of a quarter to allow firms to submit the AP1. So we're looking up until the end of September last year. At the end of this month, we'll be adding the next quarter for the final quarter of 2023. And that's recording to us that the nearly 670,000 transactions that we see there, which, as your note suggests, it excludes the new build because that's a particular problem that we're all aware that HMLR have with first registrations. But essentially, we're capturing property transaction that's pulling through in just England and Wales. Yep. You can see what the average house price is. That's moved up as you'd imagine, not as dramatically as you might have thought, but obviously there's very strong regional variations to that.
I was going to say that average of 355, Richard. I think as my colleague and friend Anthony Codling says, the British housing market is made up of hundreds and hundreds of little markets, and an average is exactly that. Obviously London average house price probably $500,000, and as we'll look at later, places like the North East, South Wales, average house price can be a lot lower than that. So an average is just that, but it's a barometer of where the market's moving.
I'd make exactly the same point, Richard. So, I mean, I think again that the strength of the data is the ability to look down into those micro markets to understand what's actually happening there. And the same holds true with leasehold as well. I mean, there are parts of the country where leasehold is rare. Central London, it's much stronger than that, 23.39%. So again, these are just headline figures. What's interesting, however, I mean, if I can jump to the next line, so this is where we're talking about how long it's taking law firms to complete. Now, this isn't a metric which ever has previously been available to people, but now, because of the combination of our land registry data and the 20CI data, which track the life of a property through the conveyancing process, we know how long it takes law firms to purchase their cases. So from the date period we're measuring here is from sale agreed to completion. And as you see, the national average 117 days, that's been coming down. It was 121. It was before that it was 124. So the market is recovering from the hiatus around COVID. And
that's good news.
Beg your pardon?
That's very good news that conveyancing is getting quicker, because one of the main complaints about conveyancers, especially from estate agents, is that the transactions are taking too long.
Yeah, and I know, and I know you're going to drop into this in considerably more detail in a moment, but any conveyancer would be quite within their rights to say, well, the reason this particular case or this tranche of cases took so long was because of X, Y, and Z, and highly legitimate. But what we're now looking at is an average across hundreds, and in some cases thousands of cases. So you are getting a much more highly honed average, if you see what I mean. And it's a compelling metric. We also measure, just to finish, Richard, we also measure the post-completion submission period. So, and again, I know you're going to drop into this in more detail, but just to explain what this is where we're looking at how long it takes a law firm after the completion date to the date on which the land registry received the AP1. So it doesn't talk to anything that happens after that point in terms of requisitions or anything like that. It's just how long it's taking the law firm to get the AP1 into the land registry. And again, we include this metric because we have lender and regulator clients who use this data as a barometer for operational efficiency. There are flags associated with this if this number starts to move out, because it's again, from personal experience, this is the one area of the conveyancing process which tends to fall down first if there is operational stress in a business. So we think this is a good proxy for overall operational efficiency in a law firm.
That's brilliant, and I think that I agree with you. I think from what having had lots of time to examine the data, where you can see firms that are let's say less than efficient, and we'll point these out a bit later, their post-completion submission can be quite poor, but the very efficient firms, it is quite good. And this is an average. The average time is 21 days. So use that as your barometer and see whether you're above or below. Now, can we move on then? Thank you very much for that review. So let's start to have a look at some of this data. So first of all, what this graph is showing here is that these are the largest 20 law firms in order of completion between in the year running up to 31st September 2023. What we can see is that the top 20 firms completed 14.2% of the total. That's 95,000. Rich, you've got another stat on that, haven't you?
Yes, it's probably my favourite one. Is that the top 10 firms in England and Wales?
Should we call them the largest 10 rather than the top 10, Rich? Should we call them the largest 10?
I beg your pardon. Yeah, no, you're being very politically correct for the first time in your life, Richard. So that's encouraging.
I have no reputation at all for being non-politically correct, do I?
Well, let me take my stats. So the top 10 firms do as much conveyancing as the smallest 2,700 firms.
It means the largest. Go on. Go on.
So it is that each of those two segments do about 10% of the market. It's extraordinary. 10 firms do 10%, and 2,700 firms between them do 10%.
That's the bottom.
If ever you needed a stat, it's just
the smallest 10%. You mean the smaller firms who do 1 or 2 completions a month do between them 2,000 firms do 10%, and the largest 10 firms do 10%. Quite a remarkable number. Quite remarkable. Yeah. So you can see all the names on there. I'm going to point out the obvious that My Home Move and O'Neill Patient at 1 and 3. They're the 2 private equity backed firms who dominate the market really. And then Taylor Rose and Setford's at 3 and 4. They're running this sort of franchise self-employed model for a lot of people. So there's no one big factory there. And then the first big sort of private independently owned firm, Gorvin's and then Davison's. But the numbers come down quite quickly. I mean, the top 3 firms have got a significant jump on the rest in terms of volumes. However, if you then convert that data into a percentage of the total, it's quite surprising, because what you see is that even My Home Move have only got a 2.3% market share. That's relatively small. And by the time you get down to the 10th biggest firm, who's at Reed Roper Reed, we're at less than 0.5%. So this is a hugely diverse market. How many firms were they, Rich? About 4,000 or so?
4.5, just more than 4.5, yeah.
4,500. What we've calculated is the top 150 firms only account for 36% of the market. And we're going to focus on that top 150 today and use them as a guide to what things are going. That's quite a chunk of the market, about just over a third, and they accounted for 250,000 completions last year. So next slide. Okay, I'm going to bust a myth. I hear this so many times when I'm talking to estate agents and lawyers. Oh, the chain will only go as fast as the slowest firm. That's not right. Let's not use that as lazy old trope. It's not that at all. What the data shows and what is reality is that every firm can speed up the transaction in their own right. A chain will take as long as the sum of the parts, not the slowest, it's the sum of the parts of the chain that determine its length. So each and every firm out there, if you are working on improving your efficiency, you will make the chain faster. So what you can do is control your own firm and make your own firm faster, and that will speed up the chain. Yes, there'll still be some slow firms, but it's the sum of the parts, not the slowest in the chain that is more important. Okay, to prove this, okay, time to complete, as Richard was alluding to earlier. What we're showing here are the top 15 firms in terms of time to complete. Over the top 150 firms, the average time to complete was 119 days, which is slightly longer actually than the total average, which would say the larger firms are a bit slower than the whole cohort of 4,000, but only by 2 days. 119 firms. The worst firm in the top 150 was running at 149 days. I'm not going to show them on this slide or any slide, come to that. But the best firms in the top 150 were running at 95 days. 95 days is, someone help me out here, 14 days, 2 whole weeks. Okay, 2 whole weeks. Oh, in fact, nearly 3 weeks, 24 days, what we're talking about. More than 3 weeks, faster than the average. Just take that in for a second. Some law firms complete transactions 3 weeks faster than the average. And do you know what? I've got 15 of them on here, and I'm going to mention them all because they're all worth a shout out. So, come on, let's give them a round of applause to Bridge McFarlane, who are running in at an average of 90 days. That's fantastic. Marsden Rawthorne, Locking Solicitors, Peter Lim, South Wales. That's the other point here. None of these firms are in one particular area. This isn't a geographical thing. These are all over the country. Might have to help me out here, Richard, where some of these firms are. But Bridge McFarlane, I think, in Grimsby, North Lincolnshire, Marsden Rawthorne, Lancashire. Please, I may be wrong.
Yes, I think so.
Lockings are in Hull, Peterlin, South Wales, Wilkin Chapman. Somebody help me out, Richard. Apologies to you, Wilkin Chapman, but well done for being on. I think the Lincolnshire as well, actually. Devonall's there in South Wales.
I think it's the Yorkshire bias here, Richard.
What other than Devonall's are in South Wales? And then we've got. I'm going to Spencer Western in London and Manchester. So there's your London fear. Vincent's, somebody help me out with Vincent's. You're all shouting at me now. Jane Brooks are in Hull, Sills and Betteridge, Lincolnshire, I think. Slee Blackwell, they're an interesting firm. Definitely not Yorkshire bias because Slee Blackwell are in Barnstaple in Cornwall. In Devon. Watson Ramsbottom, again, no Yorkshire bias because they're very much Lancashire based. Wilkinson Woodward, Halifax, and Bannister Preston, Manchester. So quite a broad spread. Freers, I missed out Freers, Askew in Bunting, who are definitely not in Yorkshire because they're in Middlesbrough. I'm sure there'll be somebody saying they are. Okay. Of course, there's one little thing I do want to point out on this slide, and this is not my bias towards Leeds United, the being blue and yellow. The yellow highlighted firms use Minerva onboarding to speed up their transactions. There you go. You see, there's the one plug of the day. Okay, so top 20. Now, if we look at the largest 20 firms, so going back earlier, we had My Home Move as the largest firm. Let's have a look how they compare when they are ranked in order time to complete. The average of the top 20, perhaps not surprisingly, a little bit slower, 122. The worst firm in the top 20, 137 days. The best firm in the top 20, 111 days. So let's give a big shout out to Glover Priest. Not only are you in the top 20, you are the fastest of the top 20. Glover Priest, and I don't know where they are. They're in the West Midlands, somewhere around Birmingham. So well done to you. Moving on. Post-completion. This is what Richard was on about earlier in terms of this is from completion to the time the property is registered at the land, or is received at the land registry. That's right, isn't it, Rich?
Yeah.
Yep. So the average of the top 50 takes 23 days. Average of the whole beta set was 21 days. The average of the top 150 is 23 days. Again, but there's huge variations. Worst being 57 days, best being 8 days. What we're looking at here is the data set of the best firms in the just the 15 firms who are numbers 1 to 15 of the top 150. So if I'm going to give the shout outs, I will do it again to TQ Property Lawyers, who managed to get their registrations to the land registry in 8 days. Fantastic. Well done to MJP and Bishopsgate's Law and Devonside. And I'm just going to go through that list. Again, there's 2 listed in yellow. You know what's coming. Those are the Minerva firms again, folks. Efficient firms. So well done to Smith Partnership in Derby and Quality Solicitors Lockings in Hull. Now, let's have a look at the final slide for this section. Time for post-completion, how the large firms compare. Okay, so this again, we're just now looking at those 20 or so large firms. Top 20 average 27 days, worst 53, best in the top 2010. So again, a little round of applause to Bishopgate's Law, with amazing, for a big firm, 10 days to get your stuff into the land registry. It shows it can be done. Okay, we've highlighted in the other box there a firm that went out of business, and this is Richard's point. A firm that went out of business in middle of 2023, Alexander Grace. Currently, even in their sort of wind down by the SRA, or was it SCLC, I'm not 100% sure, currently taking 46 days to register properties. Previously they were at 72. So this is why the lenders use this monitor to say they are a good indicator of a firm that may be struggling. Okay. Okay, just this is my final slide on this section. Okay, so when we look at leasehold transactions, you'd think, well, they're harder. You know, they're much more tough to get sorted out, to get all the management company information, and how does that affect it? So obviously the time takes longer. Again, just looking at the top 20 larger firms, they're taking 31 days as an average, with the worst being 57 and the best being 20. Bishopgate's Law seem to, obviously working out of London, have obviously got this down to a fine art with just over 12 days. And then Garvin's, Russell and Russell, friends of ours up in Bolton and Chester, doing really well. So congratulations to you. Everybody else, you need to be targeting that average of 31 days, and that's about half of the people on this graph. But that is the brilliant nature of this data. We can see who's quicker, who's faster, and who's getting a better market share. Okay, and that, ladies and gentlemen, I think is the end of that section. So now we come on to what we're going to call the purple bricks section. Okay, why are we looking at purple bricks? They have been one of the most talked about, most discussed estate agents in the industry over the last 5 years. Okay, obviously there's a lot of history to that. They grew massively, and at the end of last year they were taken over by Strike, and they started to trade again aggressively from the beginning of January. Why does that affect conveyancers? Well, they are, believe it or not, purple bricks are the biggest estate agent in the country. So they are a brilliant guide for us, okay, to see what is happening to the housing market. It's another brilliant guide. Also, as we all know, purple bricks, not everyone's favourite firm for various reasons in the estate agents, because they don't chase the chains through. Therefore, you tend to see their transaction times are a little bit longer. And also they have a really strong effect on pricing. A strong effect with the estate agents because, of course, they're, as they say on their advertising, we don't charge. You know, this is free estate agency, or maybe. And therefore they have a negative effect on what the amounts that estate agents can charge. But conversely, they do recommend conveyancers, and they charge quite a lot for their conveyancing. So that's a positive impact for the rest of the conveyancing community, that if purple bricks can charge it, so can you. Let's see how they're doing. Okay, so using the 20EA data and focusing in on purple bricks, what you can see here, that this is the whole period going back to 2019. And you can see on the graph at the bottom, they started with a 4% market share, huge really, miles and miles bigger than any other firm. And slowly they've come down until last year, where they threw in the towel. But then if you look at the right-hand side of that graph, you can see the purple line now starting to pick up again, because they're starting to advertise again, and that market share is rising. And you can see that on average, they've got a market share of 2.5%. So moving on to the next slide, I've got to get there. Okay, so if we actually look at the data in detail here, and this is where I've got to get my glasses on and look at the slide in front of me, you can see that currently they've got new instructions of 3,500, which makes them by far and away the biggest estate agent. The next, HomeWise aren't really an agent, that's a different scenario. William H. Brown are part of the Connells Group, and Connells themselves, between them, okay, are numbers 3 and 4, but purple bricks the biggest. And historically, because they used to work on a pay up front and nothing later, they were selling about 54%. So as Anthony Codley used to say to me, it's a bit of a flip of a coin with purple bricks. You pay your money up front and you got a 50-50 chance of selling it. That's what the data would seem to show. That may have changed because they've got this new model, so we'll keep an eye on that. Okay, so that's the purple bricks, and every month we do these webinars, we will have a little look at see where purple bricks are and see whether they're improving, see whether how much market share they've got, and it'll give us a great guide as to how the market is really performing, because they're everywhere. In every single town, as we will see in a minute, you will see an element of purple bricks. Maybe only 2 or 3% market share in a town, so you probably maybe not be significant, but overall, over the whole country, really quite important. Now then, the last part of our show is we are going to focus in on one particular town. Every month we are going to focus on a particular region and see which conveyancers and which estate agents are the market leaders and how they are doing. And you'll see where I'm going with this in a moment. So today we're focusing on Tyne and Wear. Brilliant part of the country, great for football fans with Newcastle and Sunderland. I don't include Middlesbrough, but today we're just looking at the Tyneside area and the Sunderland area. Okay, so here is the convey data for Tyne and Wear. Okay, again, we're just looking at the last 12 months. And what you can see immediately is that there's two firms, Sweeney Miller and Minkoffs, who are head and shoulders, almost 50%, almost 100% really, better than or larger than all the other competition. So congratulations to Sweeney Miller and Minkoffs for improving your market and doing a really good job. You can see that purple and blue line at the top, or pink and blue line at the top. They've been swapping positions constantly over the last couple of years. Okay, at the moment it's I think it's Minkoffs who are actually just leading the race. But notice behind them, My Home Move, running in currently third place, and that's because, of course, they're picking up work from the likes of Purple Bricks. Okay, you can see though that even the smaller firms, the firms in 10th place are only getting 1.7% market share. And here's my point. That is a tiny amount. If we added all those bits up together, 4, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, about 25-30% amongst the 10 biggest firms in the northeast, which means that the 70 or 80% of the conveyancing work not being guided by estate agents, just people drifting off and using firms who they may have used before, recommended by a friend. And if you do your marketing properly, you can make a huge difference in your local market, because there's no one dominant player. The fact that Sweeney Miller and Minkoffs are doing really well doesn't mean they can't improve their market share. And in later episodes, we will show you areas where there are firms who've really gone to town on the marketing and got it right using data and got to 15-20% market share. And that's the power. Just a quick delve into Sweeney Miller here. You can see they are #1 ranked firm in the northeast. Their time to complete is 109 days, which is really good. You can see their average price is 181,000, which is indicative of the northeast and perhaps indicative of the fact they've got a lot of work in Sunderland as well, and their prices are slightly lower than the Newcastle area. But overall, they completed 576 transactions. That's just purchases, by the way, of course. So overall, you could probably say they're doing about 1,100-1,200 completions a year, which is about 100 a month. So a really, really steady performance. Fantastic that they're #1, and we'll keep on it. We'll come back to them maybe in 12 months' time and see if Sweeney Miller are still top of the pile. Looking at the estate agency data in the northeast, you can see quite a marked difference. Here, Pattinson's, who are the big player in the northeast, they've got nearly a 10% market share, 9.6, and they're followed. But they're an independent agent. Richard Mathias, they're, I believe, a part of Connell's. They've got a 6% market share. And then you come down to some other corporates like Your Move. But lots and lots of independents. Again, nobody with a really outstanding, with a huge market share. I think if you came down to Leeds, you'd find somebody like Manning Stainton with a 20-30% market share. But in the northeast, it's much more diverse. So there's plenty of opportunities for conveyancers to get out there, speak to their estate agents, collaborate, work with them, and improve their own market share. Opportunities abound. And that, my friends, is the end of our State of the Market for UK Property Lawyers. But I would be remiss if I did not go through some thank yous. Obviously, thank you very much to 20EA and 20Convey for allowing us to use that data. Thank you ever so much to Chris Watkin, who I hopefully will be joining us in next month's webcast, so that you can hear it live from the horse's mouth himself. Thanks to Sticks and Glass, who own this fantastic facility here today, and where we've been presenting from. And of course, thanks to Richard Hinton for putting this together. And last but not least, thanks to our marketing company, Moxie Marketing, for helping us put this together in the first place. So that's all from me today, and hopefully we'll see you again in April. Goodbye.